Yeah, welcome. Good morning. Here from the Ars Electronica Festival 2022. We are sitting here in our broadcasting studio in the 4D box in Linz at the campus of the JKU. It is the third part of a series from very interesting discussions that we have been planning here during the festival with a focus on a wonderful, or let's say a very important program that we developed together with the Federal Ministry of Austria and our jurors, the State of the Artists Prize. It is a focus on the crisis that we have like close to our border in the Ukraine, the Russian war in the Ukraine, and the effects on the values of democracy, let's say it like that, on Europe. But mainly, it is the focus on the species that we are representing here at Ars Electronica. It is the artists. It started all that we were in really deep sorrows about the art scene in the Ukraine, and we wanted to create together something meaningful and important, looking from outside in a rather traumatized situation. I can report about that it started, the Ukraine was only the starting point. And then the next point was that we had to think about all our network friends and friends in Russia, the artists that life already got turned rather surprisingly in the most saddest way, where all of a sudden they can only whisper the truth when they even allow themselves to speak out loud. Artists in need, artists at risk is the topic. After that, when we had the focus to Russia, we said, okay, good, how can we form that here a prize that would address both sides? And then we saw, okay, good, actually we should have a look at all countries that appeared after the crash of the Soviet Union. Belarus, I mean, we all remember a few months ago that people were on the street, and not just some people. I mean, there were 10,000s of people, and the regime just smashed them down. Also there is a quite harsh and brutal atmosphere. So after a while, analyzing the European and Russian Ukrainian situation, we said then, okay, good, we have to scale up this question. And State of the Artists now is, so to speak, the question: where in this entire world would artists live due to political pressure in a situation where they would not be able to express what they want to say? And as citizens, they are mummies and daddies. They are responsible for families. They are all of a sudden in danger, including their families, their siblings, and so. We started on Thursday already with the topic of state of emergency. We then came to state of urgency, and today we are raising the title is state of convergency. What we mean is that we are questioning what the role of diplomacy, what if there is a role, and what role diplomacy has there. And we want to dive a little bit more into that topic, and we analyzed that there are two perspectives actually. So the one is the traditional form of diplomacy, politically coined, politically driven, and I will introduce you then to very interesting and wonderful guests that were strongly reporting together with us, supporting together with us that this prize, State of the Artists, could be realized here at the festival. And on the other side, we have the perspective of cultural workers, of institutions that are cross-disciplinary and cross-nationally are working and collaborating with others. And for sure, from their point of view, this term diplomacy has also a strong meaning. So it's two different perspectives on the same field, not competitive, then rather more collaborative. Yeah, so to give you a little bit of a forecast, the first part here will be that I have here two guests on the stage, Boris and Marita. They were judges together with us and they were selecting, so to speak, these wonderful samples of the winners that we have. And winners is actually not this, it is not winners in that case. So it is the selected ones because the judging went through a different process of evaluation, but we will talk about that later. That will be the first part, and then the second part will be that we invite two other guests on the stage to talk about the term of diplomacy. So, but before we start our conversation, I would like to introduce you our guests. I start with Marita Mukkonen. We are very happy to have you here. You are actually, you have been studying for a long time already what we started, but not only that, Marita is a real cultural worker. So I just read now the endless list of your activities. So she's co-founder and co-director of Perpetuum Mobile. She is an internationally active curator based in Helsinki. She has been chairperson of IAP, the Helsinki International Artistic in Residency Program. She is curator there, curator at Frame, Contemporary Art Finland, editor of Framework, the Finnish Art Review, and held key functions at NIFCA, the Nordic Institute for Contemporary Art, over several years. Perpetuum Mobile also established this, and that is the reason why you are here, extremely important initiative, Artists at Risk, a platform based on residency work initiated already in 240. And Artists at Risk is actually really the core topic that we have here as an epicenter. And then we have here my dear colleague Boris Magrini from Switzerland, based in Basel, working as a curator at HEC Basel. Boris held a PhD. He's curator at HEC, House of Electronic Arts at Basel. So he represents here in this round, let's say, the Western perspective on arts, but also is a very international person related, I mean, to the media art scene and also to the Ukraine and to the Russian scene. So he represents, so to speak, the Western perspective on the media arts. He organizes exhibition, workshops, and talk series that foster transdisciplinary dialogues between the arts and the science. He curated many shows, just like the last show that Ars Electronica, ZKM, and Tech Basel did in the context of ASH 22, the cultural headquarter, I wanted to say, of culture. And we actually both come more or less from ASH, and that it was a wonderful experience and a collaborative common project that we did. He was and is writing books. He is illustrating text, and he's actually a core personality in the field of art and science with a focus on AI. And then later on, I would love to introduce you Teresia Injain, Dr. Teresia Injain from the Federal Ministry for Europe, Integration and Foreign Affairs. She is ambassador and a diplomat, and since 2017, head of Austrian Cultural Fora, the former Austrian Cultural Institutes, where Austria has running about 29 Austrian cultural forums all over the world, but she will explain this to us later on. The last person closing the circle is Simon Ratz, also working for the Federal Ministry of Austria. He has been 12 years director of the Cultural Forum in Moscow, which is a world record for people working for cultural forums. He was the head there, and he became an expert into Russian artists and also artists that have been appearing from the countries from the crash of the Soviet Union. So these four wonderful and very interesting perspectives are hopefully coming together and creating an intense and interesting discussion. So, but now to the jury process itself. For me, I have to say, I also was privileged being part of this jury, and also Björn Gelthoff, who we are missing here, but he was joining us online in the last days. I think we together formed a rather diverse, pretty controversial, but at the same time super homogeneous and holistic group of people looking at the projects. Me personally, I learned a lot about what you guys said about the projects, about the situations, about situations of traumatized people, entirely traumatized situations, I would say. I want to start with Boris. Good morning.
Hi, Martin.
And happy that we have you here, both of you for sure. Looking at these processes in the jury, so, I mean, can you report us a little bit what you personally experienced there as an expert? What were your conclusions in the jury?
Yes, well, thank you, Martin, also for the invitation, and also for being part of this process, because it was, you mentioned you learned a lot, I also learned a lot, and it was for me a very interesting experience to be part of this jury. I think, as you mentioned, it was a very ambitious program, I think, and it was also ambition and at the same time challenging, because as you mentioned, the purpose of the program of the State of the Artist and this jury was also explicitly to support Ukrainian artists, right, in this period of war and crisis. But then you realize quite quickly that you wanted to open up and also to see the situation worldwide. And I think that was, I remember when we met at the first time on Zoom online, and we discussed about the criterion of the selection of the artists, and what do we want to, how can we effectively use this project to really support artists at need, artists at risk, and artists who need support. And it was clear quite from the start that we needed to have a kind of schizophrenic almost approach to the application and to the project, in the sense that we needed to apply different criteria to different situations, because the situation in Ukraine is different than the situation in Russia, than the situation in Belarus, or in whatever, in Syria, or in whatever, or in Hong Kong, for example, or whatever other part of the world. And it was clear that supporting artists at risk in Ukraine was not the same as supporting artists at risk in other contexts and political contexts. So that created certainly a necessity, I would say, in order to be fair, of different criteria. And it was clear from the start that we wanted to support Ukrainian artists, because that was also the necessity of this program, or the starting point, let's say, of this project. But artists in Ukraine are not necessarily at risk at the same, with the same, they're risking their life, they're risking their, and of course they're also risking their career in a way because of the stressful situation, maybe also not only because they are personally involved in the war, but maybe because friends and relatives are involved. They're in a necessity of help, but not the same as, for example, even in Russia, where artists are being, of course, silenced or censored, or even put in jail for manifesting their ideas. So there are different criteria and different necessities. So this was something that nonetheless allowed us to support Ukrainian artists that we considered relevant and interesting and need of support. But we were, of course, looking for works of other artists that were maybe different as in content. And maybe to talk about my personal experience, what I also learned a bit from a Newman point of view, or a curator point of view, is that you start a jury with some expectation also of what you wish to see as project, right? When I received this call for participating, I thought I was going to see a lot of tactical media, you know, like almost like in the previous decades, there were a lot of tactical media works, and I was expecting a lot of politically engaged works. And then I realized that most of the work, especially from the Ukrainian artists, were not necessarily so in-your-face tactical media kind of approach. And I was a bit disappointed, in truth.
I remember that.
Yes. Yeah, and but at the same time, retrospectively now, I think lesson learned, right? I mean, it's not me as a curator who needs to find what I think is relevant, but I need to also be open and receptive of what the artists are doing and what they want to, and what they think is relevant, even if it doesn't look directly political. We will see some of the projects that we will present today. they're beautiful. They might not be explicitly, directly political as maybe other artists have done in the past, but nonetheless, they're projects that are extremely well done, very, very nice, and definitely deserve attention.
So, I mean, the traditional ways of evaluating art, I mean, there are criteria, and at the end you can, I mean, as coming from the field, you would always find criteria to say the one is better or not. But it was actually not about what is better or not. I think the core of the discussion that we have, and that what inspired me most, was this different corners from where we all came, and where Björn then raised this question. Hey, what at the end is risk? Risk is such a subjective term. A risk is, you know, I mean, risk for us sitting in the truffle butters here still in the Western is so subjective, and you just cannot compare it, let's say, with somebody being in war or being under political pressure. So, meaning, I mean, you know, the contradiction area of these times that we are living in general out there.
Right.
On the one side, they are also forcing us, coming from the arts, to kind of not make the mistake that we think we are so important that we can ignore what's going on out there. So also we, as I understood what you said, need to kind of be ready for our own transformation.
Absolutely.
And did you see, I mean, you as a person, as a citizen of this life, I mean, what were your learnings out of that?
Well, yes, you know, it's true. Just to come back to what you just mentioned about the art and the relevance of, or irrelevance sometimes of art, maybe. Yeah. True. On the other hand, we also have to take our job. I mean, in a way, our job as a curator and job of the artist seriously. Honestly, quality was still a criterion for me in this project, because it was not just a purely humanitarian project, right? Because otherwise, why making a call for artists? Let's just invest the money into purely humanitarian reason. So for me, criterion of quality of artistic work and integrity of artistic work was still relevant. I mean, I think even in this case, it was important to cherish and to praise the work of artists that is done professionally in a relevant way. I think that is something. That's still part of the process, and it's also a way of acknowledging the quality of the art. So I think that was important. As a human being, I think, yes, I mean, of course, being confronted to so many difficult situations, being confronted also to emotional aspects. Like, for example, with Björn, with Marita, we had an extremely productive conversation. We were not always, of course, always agreeing with some selection or some criteria even for selection. But it was of course a fruitful discussion. I think also emotionally, you know, of course now the focus is on the war in Ukraine, and it is important that we have this focus, but also keeping in mind that there are other difficult situations worldwide. How do we deal? How do we also personally? How do we not let ourselves forget about these other realities, right? Even if we have this mission to have a focus right now, Ukraine, how do we also allow to keep an eye open of what's going on and the difficulty? I'm thinking about also the Russian artists who have been, in a way, kind of more and more, not silenced, I would say, but still are being in a difficult situation. I hope also that it's not. I think it's very important today that we keep the dialogue, the discourse open to all communities. We shouldn't go to a dangerous way in which some communities are silenced or prevented from working worldwide. I think that would be a dangerous path to go.
Yeah, but nevertheless, my personal learning there also was that looking from outside and trying to do something for the good. I remember we had the jury session, and it was literally the day, or that in these days where from Belarus the first rockets were shot on Ukraine. I think in targeting Kiev or so. And talking about ressentiments, I mean, you said, okay, we have to make a difference between the individuals and so. And on the other side, when this conflict started, everybody in Europe said, "Hey guys, I mean, you're brothers and sisters there." I mean, almost everybody is kind of related with a Russian or with a Ukrainian. There are so many boundaries. I mean, blood-wise, family-wise, but also like the collectives on the artistical scale. And the learning for me then also coming from in these informations from Björn and this sensitivity Björn brought in this specific situation, being as a personality of this field also exposed what we are doing.
I think
that was really, it took me nights to think about that. That you get a shitstorm, so to speak, when you have collaborated with a Russian or a Belarus artist from one moment to the other one.
Absolutely, and I
That is so hard
that.
to understand, but you have to start respecting
Of
this at the
course.
same time, because we're talking from traumatized people and we're talking from existential problems, meaning real existential problems, and not what we mean. My God, I have existential problem because I cannot buy the car in the color that I want, and with the electronic gear set because of the chip problematics.
Absolutely, and this is why I brought the idea of emotion involved, right? Which is important and has to be respected. And I think it's very important also when we started to promote some Ukrainian artists on our blog at HEC, right after the war started, we were quite aware, and some response of some artists were also, we love also, we have no problem with Russian artists, but please, for this time, do not put us in collaboration, because there were also some attempt to put artists, Russian and Ukrainian artists, together in order to foster dialogue, which is respectable. But at the same time, I do understand also some of these artists that says emotionally at this moment I cannot, and I think that is also, of course, something to be respected. And Björn brought this argument also during the jury. And so this was, of course, in a way, a difficult situation, because on the one hand, we realized that we don't want to exclude the Russian artists from this process. We need to be open to them. On the other hand, it's true that through this emotional consideration, it was a delicate point, and so the final decision was also to involve Russian artists if the jury would consider that one of these projects would have the qualities and all that comes with to be promoted, but also that Björn would have asked the other Ukrainian artists to see if they accepted or not a presence of a Russian. So that was part of the discussion, a lot of discussion that we had, and I think. As you said, there's no right and wrong way to do it, also especially in these circumstances. And also I think at the end it was also normal that we had a kind of a fluid set of criteria to adapt to.
Marita, you want to say something to that?
Thank you. I think that there's lots to comment, but I can continue maybe from the same topic you were talking about. That first of all, as artists at risk, when the war in Ukraine started, we have worked since 2013 with artists at risk worldwide. And we have worked with Russian dissidents, with Nadia Tolonikova already when she was jailed many years back. That was 2012, I think. And Masha Alyokina from Pussy Riot is still in our advisory board. So we have a long history of working with Russian dissidents, but of course not only with Russian, but with dissidents from Syria, from Iran, and now it's from artists from Afghanistan, from several African countries, from worldwide. And when the war in Ukraine started, we actually had to think that, are we starting to relocate Ukrainian artists? Because when we work with Ukrainian artists, it's a very different type of process, because we deal with the mass relocation, which means that we don't do background checks. All the Ukrainian artists are basically, it's from the country where there is a war. Of course, we made a decision to start to relocate Ukrainian artists, and of course there are some areas which are more targeted. And we have a Ukraine solidarity team working with Ukrainians, and there are 6 people from Ukraine in that team, and of course they are looking at that, okay, well, these cities are now more dangerous and we have to relocate people faster. But usually we go through, it's basically background checks, and we have to check that artists are really dissidents. And that was one of the discussions we had. And that's very crucial for us when we work with artists at risk, that we have to check that artists don't actually work with government, that artists don't get governmental support into countries like Iran or now in Russia and so on. We are very strict about that because we have learned that as artists at risk that we also get lots of false applications, which means that they come from artists who actually are not really dissidents. They are not even really at risk. They might kind of do art, which seems in contemporary art context, it seems kind of politically engaged, but when you start to look at it, they take part into exhibitions which are sponsored by the governments, like by Iranian government, for example, or by other governments, which certainly are kind of something we can't work with, and you don't have a dissident position if you work with such governments. So basically that's something that in Artists at Risk that normally we do quite thorough background checks. We have regional teams. It's basically we have regional specialists who are checking backgrounds. And we have, for example, team working with Belarusian and Russian dissidents. We work with both of them, but basically we always check where the artists stand. And that was something, that was one of the discussions we had, and I was very strict about that when it came to certain artists, that okay, well, we can't select this artist because this artist has received governmental support from a government which is basically not following the democratic practices, and we can't work with artists who are closely collaborating with these people. So I think that's something which, when you work with Artists at Risk, you have to be very aware about, that where do you really stand. It's not only your artistic kind of work, but also your practice, who you work with. You have to be, you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, that also I remember very good. That was a big learning for me. I mean, that sensitivity was totally new for me, but also representing Ars Electronica. Before we are extending, so to speak, this discussion for the sake of the entire global situation that you can explain us far better, I'd like to hand over again to Boris, because in between these discussions we have actually the reason why we are here, and these are the results of the State of the Artists Prize, and we would love to show you now a video, fantastic little splash, a Ukrainian piece of art, and Boris will give us then a little bit of an explanation about it. Can we see the video? All right, we are back in the studio. Boris, what did we see just
Yes, this
right
is
now?
a beautiful video by fantastic leader Splash, and similar image is the title. And I really like this video. We were talking about emotion, right? And I think this is really one of those kind of artwork that speaks to you in an emotional way. It's a video essay. It's this genre of the video essay that we know. And fantastic leader Splash has been. I've been creating. A video in different for looking for different phenomena. For example, they did a video on VR chat, which is a 3D virtual reality platform, and they also did a video documentation of some metro station, for example, or they were interested in advertising. And I think they really are looking into what I would call almost the capacity of the humans to create apocalypse for themselves in a way or another one, or this also fascination for element of disruption in the way human deals with each other. But this video, similar image, it's I think it has to do with technology and nature in a way. This dialogue, this old dialogue, this old opposition, and also the way humans try to comprehend nature by using maybe mathematics or instrument of analysis and measurement, and also the clash between the chaotic part of nature and the construction and order technology, but also by reading the statement of the artist, it's clear also that they consider nature as everywhere. It's not just nature versus technology or nature versus human beings, but it's also a consideration of nature that is all around us also, and we are part of it also with our technology. So I think this a video that speaks in a very emotional way to this confrontation, which is actually a mirror of ourselves, how we perceive, how we measure things, how we structure things, and how maybe we'll also lose ourselves by creating this distance between us and the things that we measure. I think there's a lot in this video, and I think this is what makes it also interesting. There's not a unique way to interpret it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. Boris will introduce you later on, later on another very interesting piece that we selected. But now back from this wonderful opportunity artists have to explain a rather complex, complicated, unfair world in their ways of expression. To reality, and I think, to Marita. Marita, I know that you already explained yesterday the Artists at Risk initiative, but can you give us a quick insight of what your mission is, what you're actually doing there?
Very shortly, it's Artists at Risk works in the intersection of arts and human rights, as I already earlier explained it a bit, and our key principle is that we work with artists as artists who are threatened, artists who are persecuted, artists who are escaping war, like Ukrainian artists. We never talk about refugee artists. No, we work with professional artists. Mm-hmm. And Boris mentioned, for example, it's like also in this jury work, one of the criteria was artistic quality. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to go through all our kind of criteria and selection of the artist. The first criteria normally is risk. That basically is kind of, is artist going to be jailed, tortured? It's his artist really has to go because we have so many applicants. But then the second criteria is artistic quality, also meaning that artist is a professional artist. Doesn't mean that the artist needs to have an education, but it's an artist which is kind of practicing art. Mm-hmm. It is basically on daily basis, or that's kind of one of the main professions at least. So we also look at that aspect, that we work with professional artists. And I have to say that it's for me, my background, I am a curator in contemporary art, and Artists at Risk started from the need. I co-founded Artists at Risk together with Ivor Stodolski, and we worked together with many projects. It's with dissident artists. Actually, first with artists from Perestroika times. It's from Soviet Union, former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, but then we started to do research in Northern Africa, basically after the wave of revolutions. And very clearly we had peers, we had colleagues in the countries like Egypt when it was year 2013 who were at risk for their lives. We work with the leading singer of Egyptian revolution, we work with street artists like Ganser and so on. And basically they were in the situation that it's Sisi is in power, and they were concretely threatened for their lives. And at that time, it's basically, we work in Helsinki, it's with artists in a residency organization. I worked for HIAP, Helsinki International Artist Program, and it was very natural to think that, okay, well, we start to use these facilities to give breathers for artists at risk, so that they can get out and they have some time to figure out together with its specialists, whether they are human rights specialists and so on, that what is the next step? Can they go back? Is it enough to stay away for 1 year, 2 years? Can they go back? Or do we need to kind of find a path for them as artists? And that's very core in our work, that we try to support artists, that we work in artistic context. Like ZKM is, for example, one of our hosting organizations. As we speak, they are hosting, I believe, eight artists. Peter Weibel is basically joined the network 3 years ago. We have hosted a Kurdish artist and curator there and so on. That we try to find also a right match. We have solidarity teams, and they try to find the right hosting context for each artist. If it's artists working with media arts, it makes sense to host artists in ZKM. If it's an artist working with dance, we try to find a dance institution. If it's a theater, we work with theaters, because basically after we started this work, we started to receive more and more, it's kind of emails from artists saying that, okay, well, it's basically, I'm in a situation that I have to get out, and we developed a systematic procedure. It is working with artists at risk, and just to keep it brief, before the war in Ukraine, we had 29 hosting institutions around the globe. Wow. It's basically from Goa, it is in India to Belgrade, it is to different countries also, because there are big obstacles getting Schengen visas. So basically when we had to relocate people fast, we also need hosting institutions. We have a hosting organization in Tunis, in Georgia, in Tbilisi, and so on. If we have to move fast, we relocate people, it's in the countries which doesn't require Schengen visa. And I'm really happy that we have representatives also here from Austrian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because we advocate very strongly for human rights-based visas so that artists could get out very, very fast.
So that is actually, would have been one of the questions, because also what I saw from our point of view, you wanted something good, and then you think, okay, good, you just project the meaning of good into the other's world, and then you understand, my God, I mean, what you think is good is actually nothing, or I mean, that is the best thing, or even worse, let's say it like that. So what are the desires, wishes, needs of the artists that you support on the one side? And I mean, talking about the global network, how do you finance that? What is the business model behind that? So two very different questions.
Okay, they kind of are connected. I think it's one crucial thing is just that one of our residents said that it's basically artists can have two debts. One debt is a concrete debt, and other debt is a debt as an artist. And therefore we emphasize that kind of professional hosting, its context, and that's how we work with Ukrainian artists. That basically, I was just about to say that this wave of solidarity we have witnessed now, and also your kind of, it's basically urge why you wanted to organize that was war in Ukraine, that now we have more than 500 hosting institutions, from 29 to more than 500. Wow. The wave of solidarity has been amazing. Before artists from Ukraine started to contact us, institutions started to contact us and said that, okay, can we help? Can we offer some kind of help? And our solidarity team working with Ukraine is basically, it's big, and we have relocated, I think now it's some maybe 250 artists, and we also relocate now artists in Ukraine internally, because that's also important. If artists want to stay in Ukraine, they can stay there or they can return there. And we are creating, we already have hosting organizations there. So that's also another crucial thing, that we support also artists in their regions, that they don't have to leave. But this partly answers your question, that how we finance it, that we are a peer-to-peer network. We have grown a lot, but we still say that we are an activist organization. We work with institutions like UNESCO or Goethe Institute, or then it is our hosting organizations are anything for small activist communities to museums like ZKM. So the scale is very big, but the main thing is that these institutions are engaged. And basically, often these institutions, they offer the resources. Actually, they also offer the financial resources, or they apply for the financial resources. We have, for example, we have emergency living grants. For example, we use now emergency living grants for Ukrainian artists, for artists from Afghanistan, and so on. But on long-term basis, when institution joins, we always kind of encourage them to find funding sources in their own countries, especially if they are in EU area. It's different if the hosting organizations are in Goa, in Izmir, somewhere else where there are no financial resources. But basically, we managed to do this because it's a network of peer institutions. That's how we work. We work in horizontal level, and we work very closely with other kind of peers, professionals, who want to give this professional context and support peers and colleagues who need a breather.
All right, I mean, outstanding and extremely important, incredibly important. You mentioned solidarity, the wave of solidarity. I mean, also Austria had this wave of solidarity when, I remember good, when the Syrian war started, or also from the very first moment on, where Russia attacked Ukraine, it was the same. But the Syrian case showed that solidarity is like a very temporary term. I mean, you with your experience, because you're always there where these fires are burning. I'm a little bit afraid that the solidarity to Ukraine that we have now, that united Europe in a way, in such an important way, with the pressure of this upcoming winter, with this addictedness to the gas of Russia. When this conflict is crossing the comfort zone of the individuals, when it's entering literally the living rooms, the bedrooms, the families, when they have to make compromises, I have the big fear, based on experience with Syria, that the wind is changing. We already saw this in Czechoslovakia, where thousands of people were standing on the Wenzel's place, waving the Russian flag. I mean, it's ridiculous from outside, but on the other side, it's talking about the traumatized person, the ressentiments. It is, I think, also very, very human. What do you think about that? Because I think you have seen many of these cases. Tell me I'm wrong.
I hope I could, but I think you are not wrong. It is from the beginning. It is basically when this wave of solidarity, as I called it, started. We have always it's because we were still working with, and we still are working with, Afghan artists at risk. We still have more than 400 professional artists at high risk in Afghanistan. Since 1 year, 2,000 people with their families. Filmmakers, it's musicians, visual artists, very well educated, it's speaking English, French, German, you name it. And where was the European solidarity? It's for Afghan peers, for Afghan colleagues. It never existed in the same way. France was really the only country which immediately, as often, it's basically opened the doors and basically received artists from Afghanistan, journalists, human rights defenders, Germany very slowly. We have been now working with it's Afghan artists, many of them for 1 year, and now they are arriving in Germany. Many countries, I think, haven't received one Afghan artist at risk. Basically, and therefore, when Ukrainian war started, we had this question that, okay, well, can we deal with this? That we are still working. Afghanistan is just, look at Myanmar, what's happening there. It's basically, UN will make a decision now next week that are they going to work with opposition or with military junta and so on. I can give you a list of kind of, it's Uyghur artists in China, you name it. But our approach is that we try to use this momentum basically to advocate for all the new partners, like UNESCO started to work with us, Goethe Institute, that basically we shouldn't just stand in solidarity with Ukrainians, we had to stand in solidarity with all the artists at risk. So I think this is the only way we can look at it, that it's kind of an eye-opener. That it's you also, as your starting point was in Ukraine, but then you started to think that, well, there are all these other art practitioners who are also at risk. And I think that's how we had to take it. But basically, as you say, that it's basically, it's on the ground, it's going to be difficult when the winter comes, and basically takes real engagement to stand up, as it always does.
Yep, okay. I think that is a good transition to the next topic that we have, because, I mean, these dynamics, and I don't want to talk about should be controlled, but they should be influenced by politics, I think by diplomacy. I think this is something that we discuss in the next part of our session, but before we will introduce you another selected piece. We will see now a short teaser of Clanking, Hammering, Dispute and Gurgling by Andriy Rachinskiy and Daniil Revkovskyi. I'm sorry. Again, Boris will explain us from his curatorial point of view after the teaser what we selected here. Please.
Bam! 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 Bam!
Are we back live again? Yeah. Okay. Good. In the meantime, I may welcome our new guests. I mentioned and introduced them already before, but before I introduce you again, please, Boris, what did we see there?
Yes,
these two men. They need an explanation.
Andriy Rachinskiy and Daniil Revkovskyi. They had this video. This is just a teaser we saw. The video is longer. It's in 4 chapters that actually illustrate the 4 words of the title: clanking, hammering, dispute, and gurgling. And I like very much this video. Again, we have a video that speaks to us in a kind of emotional way. You have seen the artist making these noises. They occupied the location around an ancient steel factory. And they are very much interested in this kind of post-Soviet history around the post-Soviet countries, and of course, especially in Ukraine. Those are Ukrainian artists. And I think they, in a very kind of Dadaistic approach, they dismount and they deconstruct some of the myths, maybe the founding myths, both of the Scythia and the Ukrainian or the back history of the territories, but also the myth of Soviet Union. And in a way, but also ironically, they also approach the topic of dispute and also the difficulties of fighting around a territory, fighting around maybe an ideology. I think there is a lot in this video that discuss this topic, and although it was made, I think, before the war, it seems very fitting in this context. It's about also people arguing, disputing, gargling about maybe a question of ideology, question of identity, question of territory. They have been interested in doing this kind of deconstruction of post-Soviet realities in their past works as well. So they've done works that also address these kinds of histories, but also they are interested in communities, and they have been doing also. I think this video was part of an exhibition that was done at the Pinchauko Art Center. That actually it's about the archive of humanity, a fiction archive made in the future after the end of humanity. So we also have to understand this video in this context.
Yeah, and it was an outstanding piece. And I remember Björn saying that these two artists would belong actually to this young, appearing, emerging generation. And I think the idea of the State of the Art Prize hits precisely what happens with these two young citizens of Ukraine, so that they were actually on a way becoming step by step established artists, not only in the Ukraine, but you know, the war made like what the war does, a big interruption of that.
Absolutely, but you also mentioned that what to do, right? Once the emergency call has ended and we go back to our reality, our own concern. I think this is exactly an example of what could be done. It's really giving visibility, not forgetting, and considering that also artists are existing and giving them a platform. I think this is this idea, this constant, you know, necessity of doing something or promoting an artist's work beyond the emergency call. I think this is already maybe an answer to your call, to what is important to do from our point of view.
Or let's say what we can do.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, thank you very much for that one. Please have a look in the internet. We have a digital Kunsthalle where you can see all the pieces, and they all would be worth to invest like hours to talk about. They're coming all from high artistical quality, and they're inviting us into artistical thinking of artists who are really in a different situation, I would say. But now to the next topics, and I'm very happy that I can welcome here on stage two more guests. I already introduced you Therese Indjain. She has been the leader of a very important, and for the Austrian cultural workers, we are very proud for that, for a department of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, the Austrian Cultural Forums. And Simon Ratz, who I already introduced. Both of them were strongly supporting, and together with Ars Electronica, creating actually this opportunity that we wanted to offer to the artists, that also made you come here and discuss with here. I also in that time want to really thank you for your energy and your brain work, for your diplomatic work, so that we got this support from our ministry. We are ministry. We are very happy and proud for that, because it is also a wonderful sign of a collaboration that a ministry is collaborating with an artistic institution, where it's not about the sake of local artists, then rather more it's about foreign artists. But Therese, Austrian Cultural Forum. It is a great network of forums that we have. Can you explain us what it is, what the concept is, what the target is, and where you have your nests all over this world?
Yeah, thank you. So we start in Vienna at the Austrian Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and there is a Directorate General for International Cultural Relations, which I'm heading for a few more weeks. And depending on this ministry is like with many other states, countries, is a system of institutions. We believe as Austrians that culture and cultural diplomacy is, let's put it was positive, like the heart of diplomacy anyway. So all diplomatic all diplomatic representations, also the embassies, but for 100% these 29 cultural fora we have, plus the 65 Austrian libraries we have and the Austrian institutes have a cultural mission. Most of this network is in Europe, but some of them are beyond. And they are there to be creative, to create bonds, and we call this whole thing cultural diplomacy. This is a very, very huge topic in a way because the network has so many facets. So there is like diplomacy in the stricter sense of the word are established ways of talking to each other, where one minister of culture or the foreign minister, the ministry is talking. And then there are institutions talking to each other. And then there are peer-to-peer talking to each other, and cultural diplomacy coming from a state or a government can influence these things. A lot of it, of course, is driven by a certain amount of money, because for many things you need money, but for spirit you don't need money. So with goodwill and a spirit of activism, you can also achieve a lot. So it's really would have, I imagine this cultural diplomacy from the Austrian perspective like a big carpet from the most official to the most unofficial, from the most obvious, the things that you see, to the more silent things that you do because you want either to protect somebody, to protect an idea, or to work on something that you for the moment can't openly talk about yet. If I may add, everything depends on the inner attitude we have about our work. So what is it that we do? A diplomat usually represents a country. I always thought it's impossible. How can an individual represent a country? And what is a country? In the case of Austria, it's a formerly big country having become small. In our bureaucracy, which I think is a very attractive word, we have hundreds of years of tradition. So you represent, to be honest, in a way, yourself, maybe with your ideals, and what a policy, and we do have a foreign cultural policy, thinks that is important. And you know what? It's fantastic about Austria that the political sphere leaves. Simon, you must contradict if I say something wrong, but from my experience, it's a 30-year-long experience. We have pretty much freedom to define and suggest ideas to our government, in our case to our foreign minister. From my experience, the areas we work on were welcome, like the State of the Artist Initiative. It was, we have to finance it, we have help co-finance it, we have to define it, we have to explain it, which Simon beautifully did, but that works. So the attitude matters, I think. For us, I think, our bureaucracy, also the state, what we are here as civil servants, are here to serve the artists. We are here to serve quality. We have to find ways how to ensure quality because if you're a civil servant, it doesn't know that you know about the visual arts, you know who is up and coming. So we have to have very strong networks in our own country of people who help us. And with all these areas of work in mind, we like creating some beautiful baggages, suitcases with some very interesting things in there. We start our road around the globe. A typical sentence for us is, we are a small country. Every Austrian
But
says,
we are a small country.
we are as Electronica, we are amazing, but we are in a small country.
Yeah.
So we don't have, of course, a network big as Germany or France or some other countries have much. The system is much bigger and much, but we are like, we have some very interesting individuals working for us, and we're like a Ferrari going somewhere, maybe with our set of values. And last sentence, because sorry for talking so long, but I love the topic, so I start to get a bit verbose. We leave or give a pretty huge. We create offers from Vienna for people to, if they need it, to use it. But we leave our colleagues out there, also the ambassadors and their colleagues, a certain freedom to define how they want to. It's not shaping, but they want to add something to the relations, because then it's about relations of countries. That's again a sort of impossible thing. It has again the same level, the big level of history, pain, joy, whatever, to people relations. We want to give freedom to our colleagues out there, because everything that's restrained is that you must do that, they will not enjoy it. The value is that the art's important. The arts can do so much and be so, an artistic cooperation can be so relevant and long-lasting and meaningful, because, and I stop now with that sentence, because what is understood emotionally, like we just saw from the videos, is much better understood than some knowledge. And that's okay, one element of how we travel.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and thank you for that statement. That says a lot, and you really should know that. I mean, that talking about Austrian Culture Forums means that it's not about like co-financing or entirely financing projects. It's really about the attitudes at the persons that you meet there, about the passionate persons that you meet there. But for us Electronica and for example our export activities, it became kind of part of our of the way we are going forward. When we are entering another cultural area, when we start to collaborate with other nations, countries, wherever on that planet, we first start to contact you guys, and not due to the financial support we expect, because the first thing that we hear is we are a small country, and but we only can like barely support you. But you know, there were so many essential help from you guys already coming to us. Whether we have logistic problems, and you helped us with the diplomatic post. I mean, in bringing things that were blocked in some customs quicker to here. So I think it is a very in our culture immanent, but sensitive, so to speak, politically driven thing that we can be very proud on. Diplomacy general. Can you know, it's diplomacy from outside, and also when we hear politicians are traveling to Ukraine, to Russia, meeting Putin in some black box, and then they go out telling us, "Why I told him in the face," or blah 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 blah. All these things. From outside, it appears that diplomacy is something that is happening behind, so to speak, the stages. It's a little bit blurry. It's a bit not transparent. Can you give us a proper explanation what diplomacy actually does, and or let's say the other way around, how are transformation processes going on? So, and what role diplomacy is there? Is it outdated from your point of view, or is it still something that we desperately need? And what do you think could do diplomacy in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and not talking about culture and arts?
Yeah, Honzik, you're asking me things I'm not about Russia, and so okay.
You can answer what you want.
I think
but I
it's.
want to just let's. In other words, what is the meaning of diplomacy in these times and tradition and in the tradition?
I think it's very important to connect the word diplomacy with the word of dialogue, and I think as a diplomacy is utterly important because it's a way of talking to each other. Our definition of dialogue, and a colleague of mine designed for us a whole manual for dialogue, of technique of dialogue. She was ambassador to Belarus. Is the following: a dialogue. Dialogue is done in diplomacy in a space where two partners meet, and they are willing to agree or to take a road together without knowing what is the outcome. That's a dialogue space. It's not that, okay, I have an agenda with you, I want your glasses. This is not dialogue, because then it would be a monologue of something that it's exerting willpower. So the space, let's say, as an ideal of diplomacy, it would be the art of dialogue, the art of encounter. And for the dialogue, in order to be successful, you need to know certain things. First, the technique of dialogues, which is an attitude. It has to have a certain amount of compassion, a certain way of not only wanting to push your will through, get your will through, but to make a deal. And it's very important, that's why diplomats are important, who know the other culture. Because of course we are all the same, because we eat and drink and sleep, but we are not the same. So it takes people to know and understand the other culture, also the other political field, the other political constraints in another country. It's not the same, the religion, the taboos, the traditions, what is impossible, what can be done. And the more you know about the other, which is, I think, a form of interest in the other, and can be a form of being a bit less egoistic. If you take yourself back, okay, Austria, of course, it's the navel of the world, we're the best, blah, blah, blah. You start to travel, it changes you. And then you start to understand and to see how difficult situations of so many people in the world is. And then the question is, how can I make a contribution? No? So diplomacy, I said it at the beginning, it has many levels. You know, when the heads of state and the institutional people speak, and there are other ways of being effective. And the guy sitting to my left, who I know better than the gentleman on my right, I mean, my God, he is effective.
We will come to this. To this person,
but diplomacy is important because, and also, you know, why diplomats are important? That are colleagues. Let's take our colleague in Egypt, our ambassador to Egypt and the Cultural Forum in Egypt. They are there. They understand the situation. They are there. They report home and explain. It's a way also of avoiding misconception and misunderstandings.
All right. So that means the bigger the shifts, so to speak, are the bigger is the complexity, and the more is the need that somebody is accompanying these processes, and that is and to create, so to speak, to cultivate the encounters. That is diplomacy?
That is diplomacy.
All right.
Recently, all the diplomats said to me, the best and the most effective diplomats are the ones who love the country where they are serving. Yep. It doesn't necessarily mean that they agree with the regime or they love everything that's happening on the political level. It's not that. But it's through understanding you become creative.
Yeah.
You become creative with something that you like in a way.
I think
It's
that should also be an attitude of citizens, being curious to the other's opinion, being passionate and open doesn't mean that you have to change your opinion, and having the attitude with this openness. And attitude and openness and curiosity is actually the bridge, the perfect bridge to introduce you and to close the circle of these wonderful personalities that we have here. It's Simon Ratz. Simon Ratz, as you already mentioned, is for me a perfect hybrid in the most positive sense between an art-addicted person and a diplomat on the other side. Simon has been leading, directing for 12 years, as Teresa told me, the Austrian Cultural Forum in Russia, in Moscow, which is totally untypical. Normally the duration is 4 years. So he's holding the world record for cultural diplomacy on one way. He became, over the years, I have to personally say, I call him a friend of mine. He was the one inviting me for several trips and stays in Russia, and he introduced me to a wonderful art scene that in its diversity and its self-understanding is a universe for itself, and this is the Russian art scene. I also want to say here, it's also that Simon and me, we were starting this dialogue about that prize, and mainly for sure because of the Ukraine situation, but also then another mainly because we are so deeply related into the Russian culture and art world and to persons there. We have friends there, and we said also we totally make clear that we will, whatever happens, stand in front, behind, and besides to these friends. And that I think is also a very important sign. Simon, you spent many years in Russia. And I would like to talk a little bit about the situations in Russia too, because one needs to make a difference between the regime, what it's doing there, and the people that are left over there. Tell us a little bit about your time in Russia, and then tell us a little bit how time shifted, because I guess you're still in intense contacts with your friends.
Yes, thank you. I mean, first of all, Russia is for me. I want. So when you ask me the question, I try now to respond without to making it like a romantic, remembering a beautiful bouquet, a bucket of flowers that I seen, but try to give some to think about it in a way that is also adequate to the situation we have now, and of course this is always it's always in the head, and it's not only in the head, it is all our reality. Yes. So first of all, I experienced Russia as an incredibly diverse country, yes? And diverse in the way that it is, and that it embraces a lot of different cultures, regions, and for me, what is interesting that it has so many different cultures. You just think about the south of Russia, the Caucasus. I could think about in the north about some northern civilizations, the Yakut. They even have some shaman religions there. You could talk about Siberians, about people from St. Petersburg, from the imperial, intellectual. So there is a lot of different inside it, and then you have this very strange, and that's really a strange thing of like this kind of empire idea, yes, because it has always something imperial, and that's also part of the problem, I think, then that is existing now, because what does it hold together, all these things, and then you have this really kind of, in a way, monumental but also very tragic history that is accompanying this, I say, conglomerate of civilizations. Yes? and really a conglomerate of civilizations that not necessarily kind of fit to each other or are bound together by something that possibly even in the Soviet. So you have this Tsaristic empire that was somehow then kind of transforming into a Soviet empire, and now it is most I will always say then it switched into a kind of like a puzzle or like a collage of historism. Yes, so now somehow the guys they think they try to make a collage of historism, and so to pick some parts of an aesthetics of the imperial time from the Tsarist time, and to kind of merge it with elements of a Stalinistic self-understanding, and all this is a big mess. Yes? But what is interesting, I just make it, that's an interesting point, what does it mean to these different people living there? And I think it's very important to when talking about Russia, to think about the people. And it's not, I don't even talk about the artists, but about these different people. Because what does a Yakut person sitting in a yurt, in a tent in the north, think about this kind of what does it mean for the person, this kind of government? What does a person in the Caucasus think about? The Caucasus has fought almost 100 years against the Tsars, yes? For example, and they are struggling until today. Yes? What is binding this country together apart from its leadership?
Currently, it's, I think, propaganda. But
many things. But for me, the most I had the big luck, and that's bringing us back to this diplomacy thing, that in the embassy, and now we are from these big thoughts and things that I barely could describe, because I'm just a person who has traveled a lot, and it was a big privilege that my country kind of gave me the opportunity to travel 12 years through this country, yes? And with open eyes, and having the chance to meet creative and bright minds. Hence, and that's an incredible chance that I got. Hence, and I took it, and the idea was, and that's so for me. Russia is a country of incredible diversity of cultural different spheres and regions and traditions, and on the other side, I met an incredible amount of wonderful creative minds. I say bright minds, hence that was based just in the fact that I had this incredible job, hence that I could do that. Hence,
but what is their state now? So I mean, they could speak out loud what they think. They were like very open-minded towards the world, towards their own cultural identity. They were aware. They are aware that what Russia is.
So I think, I think what is. I think I had a great. These 10 years are possibly like a chapter. I think it's possibly a chapter that is a little bit longer. It's a chapter possibly of 20 years. Hence, I think this is a chapter that now has been closed. I think it was a chapter that was opened, let's say, receiving this kind of this freedom out of a mess situation of the breakdown of the Soviet Union, with a lot of mess, with kind of something anarchic, possibly also, but also opportunities, hopes, ideas, and then somehow the slow kind of creation of structures. I talk now about the culture and arts, yes? The foundation of structures, the attempt to create festivals, to create museums, to create things mostly apart from the state, because there was not. This was possible in a certain absence of a federal cultural policy. So basically, people who were smart and who were visionary, they could realize these things. And then, over the last 10 years, I think so. This was more and more restrained, and so this there was more kind of the. People had more and more difficulties to live this freedom and to create spaces and structures of free art. Yes? It was on the basis of there was incredibly brave people running it and doing it, and taking the freedom. Not it was allowed and then getting less and less possible. And I think it is somehow a very tragic, or I say, a tragic thing that this got less and less air in the space. Yes? I think it's not the thing that came from one moment to the other. I think it was definitely something that was happening over many years, and it could have been so. It was clear to everybody, and I think, to be honest, also to the Westerners, because we all know examples how things got turned in a direction that we knew that it is not good, and now a lot of people that are good are now in a situation that after the situation getting worse, somehow the light was switched off. And now there are people who need to go, and those who are not left, they have a reason why they are there. I think it's very personal. There are people who are there. They are there because they have perhaps their kids at school, or they have perhaps parents who need care, or they have a job and don't know how to survive, and they simply just have no money to go anywhere. I think things are very simple. I think things have sometimes very simple explanations. And I think it is very important to stay somehow with people, because it's just about. It's not so. I think it's not. Sometimes it just needs to stay humble because when we have the privilege to live in a society, in a country where we sit now on this podium and eating a nice bio potatoes, French fries in the outside, then we should keep our minds kind of cool and humble, I think, and sometimes and for sure try to help where we can do it. And not only to help, I think it's not only about help, it's very much, and when you ask me about the people I know, they have struggled a lot. Yes, they have always been brave, many of the artists, just because being an artist has been necessary to be a brave person. Yes? And I think the people are very proud, and with a reason. So I think we should work with these. My dream is that there are both chances to work with this, to continue working with the people. Because even to I think it's very sad to diminish the people. There are people who have talents, there are people who know a lot of things, and when we have a chance to find ways to work with these people, we should do it because they are good.
And this is what you're actually doing.
Not kind of I know.
Well,
but I think that is something that I think is very important, because I think it's very important to try to see these people as friends and try not to wait until they are victims. They are already, many of them are victims, and I think it's very important to try to not wait that this is happening, and try to help the people before, as colleagues, before that they are on the ground and you need to pick them up.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think this is what you're doing and what you're symbolizing, or what you have been symbolizing the entire time. I mean, as far as I know, you're running a little space at the Museumsquartier in Vienna, where you were supporting Ukraine artists. On the other side, I know, and I just saw this in the recent days at the festival, that happy we are, many friends from our Russian network could make it to the festival, went to Europe, are partly are looking for a new existence, for building up new existences. And also there, I know that you are an address that you can call every day. I thank you very much for that support, for that work that you have been doing the entire time, and you will keep on doing that for sure. Please.
One thing, correct, very important. It's not. Sorry. It's not. I mean, I like to work, but what I do it as a part of our mission, I need to say.
Yeah.
I think that is very important, because it is where it's not me. I have. So we have a small. We, that is to say, I didn't got crazy. We is our foreign minister, or other institutions. But the thing is, there is a small studio in Museumsquartier in Vienna, where we are in 2 months
Rhythm.
A rhythm. We invite young artists from Belarus. Young, that doesn't matter how old you are. We are inviting female Belarus artists because they're very, very sad how people are coming from there. And we set up together with Transit and another institution. We set up a state program to support Ukrainian refugee artists in Austria, but also with the idea to work with not as a social program, but also with the idea to take a person by his or her profession. Yes? Because I think it's very important to have, because this gives a lot of dignity that the person has. I think to say, I take you by your talent. And a professional artist can be a lot of different things. It can be a folk artist. It can be it's very broad. Well, I think when a person needs help, then I think it's very nice when also a professional community is somehow caring for a professional community in another.
Yeah, and that is actually also the idea of the State of the Artists Prize, to not blindly raise money and spend money, then rather that you don't have and that we didn't have, but we could raise an amount of money where we could start to build a bridge, so to speak, where we wanted to kind of make artists in their artistical career, empower them to kind of go on their ways. It was clear for me that where your support came, it just came about the word attitude, and you are a person standing for attitude and friendships and friendship and openness, and I'm very happy that that I know you, to be honest. I would love to kind of keep on talking with you guys for another few hours, because the topic is so relevant and important. But before we are closing the circle, I'd like to kind of quickly make a wrap up, and that's really a quick one, because I mean it made clear, this round of people and the protagonists sitting here, that cultural diplomacy is actually not a term defined in some book already. I think it is a term that can be used and utilized by the politics, but it is also a term that that the same way is used by artists, art initiatives, and institutes. And here we have, anyways, a collaborative sample that made that State of the Art Prize possible here. Once more, I thank you for your contribution. To close this, and before we have then we can have a look at the entire video of the art piece that we just saw, I wanted to kind of raise one question and I want to ask you to keep you short if possible. In times of crisis, I often discussing with others in the truffle butter, I'm raising I have been raising this provocant question if art is still relevant in these times. I mean, in Ukraine we see that artists or former artists became soldiers, and you know. I don't know from whatever romantic corner one will come up, but I am sure that when it's about the existence, when it's about saving your life or the life of your siblings, art becomes relative. Art in the traditional way, what we see in the monuments, in the architecture monuments that are showing these. But us as an art, as an attitude, might be something different. Is it possible to kind of make a quick one on that? And please try this. And this, I would like to give you the mic, and that would be the final question. Therese?
Is it okay if I start?
Yeah.
Talking about Ukraine, which keeps us busy in heart and mind since February 24. And to give one example from an experience I had with our foreign minister and the ambassador of Ukraine, we presented in Vienna translation of poems by Lina Kostenko. Lina Kostenko is 92 years old. She's like the Ingeborg Bachmann of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. living in Kiev. She wanted to stay there, and presented the poems. And afterwards, somebody from the audience, Ukrainian lady, told me, poems, lyric, yeah? How many people read poems? And they said to me, are you aware, Lina Kostenko is so present in the social media that people in this horrible situation of fear, and it was the time where Kiev was like, so much threatened. One or two lines of a poem by Lina Kostenko, she said to me, it can be a soothing moment. Some moment of light in when life is full of fear, and so that a thought by a poet can help for a moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very poetic.
But
Boris?
in a way, I would like to rejoin this idea. I remember in March when we started this blog series at HEC in Basel with the focus Ukrainian artists. I spoke with many artists on Zoom, of course, and I remember the Sweeter group, the artists of the Sweeter group, they were in Kiev in a bunker, and they said, well, they were just shelling before, and now we're in the bunker. And of course, we try to discuss with them how do you want to be part of this project? Do you want to show something on our blog? We want to give visibility to Ukrainian artists. We want to also to our public to know about the existence of artists doing media art in Ukraine. They said, yes, of course, we are super grateful. We want to show our work. It's difficult, of course, to concentrate. It's difficult to work, but it's also important. We need to do this. And I remember some of them saying, well, we will go crazy if we don't do work, if we don't do art, if we don't keep doing art. I think, and there's no right and wrong answer, Of course, I understand your point. Of course, you say, how can you do art when there are people dying, your relatives are dying, your friends are dying? I think you don't have to. You do what you need to do. But I think also to suspend this judgment of maybe also saying, okay, if somebody has the moment, need the moment, wants to find the moment to do art, and art can be powerful as well in conveying ideas, in sensibilizing people, because at the end it's about that, right? It's changing ideas, and that is powerful. And I think it's not up to us to say what an artist should do and when he or she should do it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I also, it's kind of agree there that this, of course, is everybody's individual choice. I can just kind of refer to experiences is kind of, I have working with artists at risk. One experience from Ukraine, is somebody from a theater group. It's basically who's just started a new theater group, decided to go and fight the fight in Ukrainian army. He got wounded, and when he was recovering, he organized readings. He's fighting the fight, but he's an artist. He's still an artist, and he creates art. So I think that that's also something. Therefore, it's totalitarian governments are also so afraid of art practitioners. Therefore, we have artists at risk. That basically artists don't stop creating art, even though yesterday we had a Ugandan artist with us who had 3 tooth missing because he was beaten up and so on. You look at artists in Afghanistan, they don't many artists don't stop being artists, even though something else happens when they are engaged artists. And I think that is something which shows us this extreme power of art. And I think as we saw, as Boris talked about it, it's the variety of artworks we received in this state of artists was beautiful, because basically it's up to artists to think it's what kind of art they create. They don't have to talk about the war. For example, it's basically all these artworks dealing with ecological issues, which are, of course, very related to war through ecological destruction and its climate emergency. We saw many of them. I was really impressed about that. We also work with ecologists at risk. There are very many artistic takes, and that's always a surprise for us working with artists, and I feel really privileged working with artists at risk. Same is currently, it's with Russian dissident artists. It's basically, we are hosting quite a few. One of them, for example, from Theater Dog, Mikhail Durningov just wrote the new play. It's about ecological destruction, actually. That's what's the topic of it. But lastly, I want to say that it's basically this about the state of artists. I really hope it continues. And it's basically that engagement with Ukrainian artists will also continue after the end of the year. Because like I said, with Afghanistan, that should also continue, with Myanmar and so on. Ukrainian artists certainly need kind of support. It's long term. They need support back in Ukraine, because that's also very important that artists are supported there. And therefore we had to be kind of wide open. It's not one or another in this kind of work. It is basically, we just had to try to do what we can with our peers, and with art is very powerful language. It's alongside with it's diplomacy. We, for example, actually we get funding from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from peace and conflict resolution, and I think that says it. Why do we get it from there?
Thank you very much, Simon. Would you close the circle?
Boy, yeah, I can't do it in a very serious way. Well, you made me think as often, and you've about the importance of art. Well, I like cats. And so I sometimes think what makes me love, what should make me love people more than my cat. And I think one of the things definitely is art. Is definitely one of because it's a human condition. It's something that makes us human. Yes? That's the first. So I think we can see this question in this. It's an eternal question because it's a human part, and I think that art history gives also interesting answers to the question of relevance of art. Because now I just was thinking when you asked the question, I was thinking, of one of my favorite artists, the artist who made one of the first who made the poor person subject, the Rembrandt. When he was making these incredible faces of the poor Jewish people in his district where he was living, and making it the subject in art. And it's like a huge thing, a huge person. And until today, these people standing in line to see the works independently of the anywhere. It can be in Paris, it can be in America, wherever these works are, people understand it. They understand the point. You don't even need to read a book about Rembrandt, and person is touched as a person. And please, but I don't know who of us or anybody here could name the Minister of Defense or even the king and the prime minister and all the generals' names of Rembrandt's time in the Netherlands. Everything has gone. All these people are irrelevant. All the wars, everything has disappeared, but the works of Rembrandt are there. And so I think that says how incredibly powerful art is. Because all these powerful men has gone. We don't know their names. It's all gone, everything.
So we had now 4 different answers. So I would say 4 different answers means that you just cannot answer that. But for me, also one thing is clear, that not talking about art, what is so deeply embedded into humankind is this capability to express ourselves in an alternative, creative way, which helps the individual to be more self-reflected in its own behavior, to be aware of, to become part of the image, so to speak, not like the photographer's eye, where you exclude your own position and exclude yourself. So this capability, this quality of humankind, that we can, also this quality of subversion, that we can create an energy, a creative energy, that would help us, so to speak, to understand the situation in where we find ourselves and better, and to find out or in these situations, is also something that I think is something that is part of us, if we want it or not. I thank you very much for the time. You are all very wonderful. I mean, you are wonderful, and every opinion, every word that you said was an enrichment for this very complex situation that we are facing. It is very incredible. It's incredible important what you're doing. Keep on going. And also with the State of the Art Prize, this is not a one-shot. We will put a lot of energy into that, that this very important question is just the kicking off, that this year is the first try, the first experiment, and the start of a journey, because I think the world out there needs these kind of initiatives. The last sequence now, and sorry, dear technicians, I know we are over time, is now that we want to show you now the full art piece of clanking, hammering, dispute, and gurgling from Andriy Rachinskiy and Daniil Revkovskyi from the Ukraine. I wish you a wonderful Sunday. This is the last day of the festival. Tomorrow we go sleeping. And then we appear again as citizens, and we will face again the problems that everybody's facing back into the reality. I wish us peace and good luck.
bam, 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 bam. Bull Bull, 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 bull.